get recorded. There we go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, Mark,
Yes. There we go.
I'd like to remind you that the sound's been cutting in and out for Zoom, and I think what's happening is when people in the audience speak,
Oh,
it intercepts the Zoom sound, so it's going to be really important for the people in the audience to please remain silent so that everyone will be able to hear what's going on. This happened the other night in the town board meeting.
the speaker has a silencing mode, so.
Okay, thank you.
The microphone.
Okay, thank you. When I was down here 2 weeks ago, at the last meeting, there was, sounded like a little bit of debate over the numbers, kind of pro and con on the zoning based upon both testimony at the public hearing and the letters that were turned in. And I guess I just want to comment, I'm sure you all are aware of it, but I just want to comment for the record that a week ago, 1,200 and some signatures were landed with a pretty heavy thud right there of people who were at the very least opposed to zoning being enacted before 2024. And most of them were flat out opposed to zoning. So I want to say that for the record to you guys, because there was a little bit of discussion about, you know, where's the majority in the town lie? So I think that's an indication perhaps. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to speak to privilege of the floor? I don't see anyone online. Hearing none, we will move along to approval of the minutes of March 7th. Which,
I see online hands.
oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see any hands up.
Oh, Secretary Renee Farrow.
Renee
Let me ask her to unmute.
Farrow?
Hi, guys. I'm having pretty unstable internet, but I'm going to try.
Okay,
Am I cutting out at all?
no,
No,
Okay, well, that's a good thing. I don't have video. Is that okay?
yes,
yep.
I was not able to go to the last meeting, but I was able to look at it online. And I wanted to address a comment by, I believe, Mr. Bruce Murray. And I have some actual experience in the area that he's speaking about, and I just wanted to address it. He said, quote, "Lots of schools are surrounded by commercial areas. This is not a school where people bike or walk." I will tell you that I had the privilege of teaching at Caroline School for about 4 years with the legacy of Janie Clark. And Janie Clark developed what I believe is a standard model for outdoor education. And if any of you have ever walked the grounds of Caroline School, what you'll note is that there are beautiful walking paths. There's a path that goes back to the creek. There are areas for wildlife and nature study and research. There was also at one point a garden, a community garden where students learned how to plant and to harvest and to share food in a community. And so I will tell you that as a teacher, I taught quite an amazing, diverse group of students. And a lot of those students were in what you're identifying as the Bessemer neighborhood or Bessemer area, which goes from, I think, about Caroline School all the way up to Bessemer. And I just had a chance this past weekend to just investigate that area again. And I actually counted the number of homes. Many of them are nestled in beautiful wooded areas. A lot of the people who live here seem to be very invested in gardening, in developing wildlife. Many have ponds. And I counted, I believe it was 111 houses. Many of them flank off from areas that you drive off 79, they don't go that far in, maybe a quarter of a mile, 0.4. But in the radius of 2 miles moving in off the highway, I counted about 111. Within those 111 houses, there are many, many children that live there. And I guess I will end by saying that for me, it's all about a vision. And we've seen our community, for those of us who've lived here for a while, change. last 30 or 40 years. And I think we have to think about what it might be in the next 30 or 40. And so I guess there's a question, do we want it to be nurturing families, nurturing a diverse community where there are neighborhoods, walking, bicycling, nurturing nature, being able to have gardens with good wells and good water? I think so. And so I will just say that for the record, I wanted to say that we have a choice. And certainly some neighborhoods, or I'm sorry, some communities do choose to develop areas interspersed in family neighborhoods and schools. But as a teacher, I would say that that would be a very bad choice for our wonderful Caroline School, which I feel is one of the hugest asset to our, to our community. It nurtures who we live here, the young people that live here. So
Thank
that's
you,
all.
Renee.
Yep.
Thank you. Bruce?
I need to correct that. Bruce Murray did not say anything about the school. I don't know where she got my name. I had never said a word about the school. So I don't know who she's talking about.
I may have said something about, there aren't kids cycling to the Carolina school.
Okay. I will check the record.
That's fine.
And on the way to this meeting, I started at Beesmer Road and counted houses from there to Deerfield Lane, and there are 23 residents along that road next to 79. I didn't go down Deerfield Lane and count those. I didn't go up. There were 23 houses. I don't know where 110 came from.
We're not going to debate that now. So thank you.
Just for the record.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah, I want to object to that last comment. I think that was inappropriate and unnecessary. Thanks.
Thank you. Can I move on to the approval of the minutes of March 7th? Does anyone want to move them? I'll move them. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any questions? All in favor of approving those minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimously approved. Thank you. Are there any additions to the agenda? We have a sort of a long list that Bill has developed. Anything else that anyone wants to bring forward?
Surprise, surprise, I've got a couple items.
Okay, Bill?
All right. And I, obviously I understand we may not get to these. There are two other things that I've been banding about. One of which I think we definitely have to address, and I hope we have time to talk about this and the other. So one has to do with the Water Resources Overlay District. I think there are some conflicts in the language somewhat in that. And part of what needs to happen is a clarification of the intent or goals for the Water Resources Overlay District. So what I'm putting on the agenda is having that conversation. I can explain better when it comes to that. But I can lay out the two possible policy positions that lead to somewhat different changes to the language in section 5.3. And then the other is somewhat related to our building size discussion that is already on the agenda today. As I was looking at things and seeing that we don't have any side yard setbacks, and I was musing on, well, then how close could, say, two commercial buildings be? Could they be right up against each other, but in different parcels and therefore make one big building? And I passed a few questions by Nan and Ernie, but I think there's a few just comments that are probably worth us banding about in terms of how one tries to use zoning law to govern scale and intensity and location in a parcel, and whether or not we want to consider adding any side yard setbacks for commercial buildings in either all zones on zone boundaries in the focused commercial zone. But I think that may be a conversation that we need to have as well.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Tim Murray, do you have a report? Tim? Not even sure. Do I see Tim up there? I'm not sure if I do.
Look like you dropped out.
They may be having problems with their computer, with their.
I think they're having problems with their internet. He said he was on his way to the town hall, so he might be in between.
Okay, so when he comes, we will deal with that. So let us, I made the mistake of not stapling these together, so I'm going to. Okay, I'm going to start with my compendium of things. Okay, so.
I mean, Gene, if you want to deal with them in the order in which they were in the document, the first page has the motion from Barbara about staging and storage areas. And
Okay,
an alternate from me. So I don't know if you want to go in that order or not, but
I
that's,
do. I just was having trouble finding my first page.
it'll say move a Barb at the top.
Ah, okay, I got it. Okay. Move a Barb. Here we are. So staging and storage. So Barb,
I'm going to decline to move that one.
okay, thank you.
So if anybody else would like to move it, they can, but I'm not going to.
Does anyone want to move that? Hearing none, I'm moving along. Move a alternate part one bill.
Right. So this is a two-parter. And, you know, it's an idea and folks may hate the idea, and that is totally fine. So Nan created a definition for enclosed cover for storage areas, and there was an enclosed covered storage area definition. And I tweaked it some, and we'll get into it in discussion, but the main difference was instead of simply saying that it had to have a roof over it, my concern about, say, a staging and storage area, say close in a hamlet, would basically be screening it from view. And so my change to the definition was to basically say it had to have walls. I actually don't care if it has a roof, but it can. And so when I make the motion, I will read the change, or we can put it up on the screen. And then the other part of that was the reason, in part, for doing that is then when we get to the use table, I think that an uncovered, no walled storage area is probably perfectly appropriate in a number of places in town, particularly the focused commercial district and in much of the ag rural district where people might want to have large equipment outside. I get it. But if you're in close to houses and residences, particularly in a hamlet district, then I thought there might want to be something that had some sort of screening around it. And so I made two lines in the use table, one for the open area and one for the enclosed area. And so the two-part motion was one to change what the definition of an enclosed one is. And then the second part of the motion was to make changes to lines in the use table. So that's the background. Should I put them up when I make the motion?
That would be
Or
great.
can everyone have them there? Okay, let me,
Yeah, because people online won't see them otherwise.
okay, so let me see if I already have it open or not. Yep, there we go. Okay, so I will now share my screen if I can get back to Zoom here. All right, so is that big enough for you guys to read?
Yes,
Okay, so the definition that is currently in the draft zoning law says that enclosed covered staging storage parking area basically has at least a roof for the temporary permanent storage of And what I changed that to, and this is what the motion will be, and this is what the debate will be on, is a structure that screens from view from the public way or adjacent properties what's stored inside. And the rest of it is pretty much the same. So essentially that part here is the key point, is do we feel it needs to screen from view, or does it only need to have a roof on it? And then the next part, once we decide that, would be what we deal with on the use table. So I'm moving part one here to change the definition from the top part to what's in the bottom part.
do I have a second?
My second would be contingent on the other part of this movement, so I don't know how you do. The only question I have is I will second this.
Thank you. Okay,
Discussion?
I'm gonna call you.
So my question is so that this would allow landscaping in lieu of siding?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So I want to know.
Good question. So it does say structure, and I'm happy with anything, if it's a better word than structure there. Because you're right, structure seems to imply a man-made thing and not landscaping.
Do you want to insert a structure or landscaping?
What do you think, Ernie? Anybody else?
I mean, basically, an enclosed covered staging storage parking areas is a structure, and I think that's
Okay.
what the point was, so,
Yeah, okay, I get what you're saying. So yeah, I mean, again, if this is clear enough, I mean, we'll need Nan's 2 cents here. Would this definition be clear enough when it went in front of a review board that someone says, I'm just gonna put a bunch of shrubs around my thing and, you know, and and then maybe a few posts and a roof to make a structure?
you could just say, you could have a, from the public way, comma, by use of siding or landscaping or other means, comma, screening from a video.
I have a little bit of a problem with.
It has to be after Jason probably, but yeah, go ahead.
If I look at it and say I'm on the review board and I look at enclosed. Enclosed right away tells me, it's covered, it's got something around it. Doesn't say, when it says enclosed, to me, I would think some kind of structure.
Let's see where it says enclosed.
Right here.
The definition, the words, the definition.
Oh, enclosed covered, oh, yeah.
It could be
So,
screened, enclosed, covered.
just.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Or again, it could just, I don't know.
Michelle?
No, I'm just agreeing with Bruce. I mean, it says it's got to be enclosed, so I think
Yeah,
if it's just landscaping, it's obviously not enclosed, so it's got to be something different here. I mean, I understand you can say a structure and or landscaping, but you can't call it enclosed. I was in college, but
so.
Yeah. Maybe Nan has brilliant suggestions there. Yeah, it's the enclosed / covered word that, the point, there could be a parking area. It could be enclosed, not enclosed, but it should somehow screen from public view the stuff that's inside.
Nan, do you have a suggestion here?
Well, this was added because the original was just staging, storage, or parking area. So that's what we started with.
Yep.
And,
So
so there's, I think you have to decide what is it that you're trying to accomplish. I mean, a parking area, I think the original reason this was put in was the thought that someone had just a lot and they just decided that they were going to use it to store equipment in without any building or business or other. It's just a lot that has equipment sitting in it. And I forget how it went. I forget from last meeting how it went to this 2-part, which was an open area. And then I added, well, the opposite of an open area is a closed or covered area. So I think that a facility, it really isn't then not a facility or a structure, but it would be an area that is screened from view.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't want a building and you don't mind it being open, then it's literally an area that is screened from view, blah, blah, blah. And then the rest of it. So then it's just a big open area that is somehow screened. But I think that's, I think you have to decide what is the use that you're trying to regulate.
Right. So, I was the genesis to some extent, and it was, Barb was proposing, opening up staging, storage, parking area to some hamlet districts. In partly regard to the fact that we know we've got at least one, the Austin Austin Construction stores a bunch of equipment in a building right there in Slaterville Springs, and that seemed fine. But thinking about a big open lot with a bunch of stuff on it right next to a bunch of residences didn't seem to sit too well with me. And so I said, I might be more comfortable with that if it was screened from view, or at least not visible. And that became covered. And I understand why it may have been, but for me, if there were it was a bunch of posts with a roof over it, and you still had a bunch of spools of cable and wire and stuff just hanging out there next to people's houses, that wasn't appropriate, again, to me. Other folks may feel differently. So that's why I added the idea of screening to the definition. So that's the evolution of this from where we started. Again, folks may feel it's not important. In a
Okay, I'm going to go back now and say, if you're trying to change that motion now to what you have on the screen, Ernie, are you happy with that? As seconding it?
Well, no, I think we still have a big conundrum here, that Bruce has pointed out, the implicit in this is that, we've removed the.
You removed enclosed,
Okay,
yes.
all right. Well, no, staging, storage, parking areas, screened. So there's going to be screened and unscreened?
Well, the other one may just simply be open, but not say anything. It may be or could say not screened, but it could.
I think he's planning to leave the staging, storage, or parking areas as a non-residential, non-agricultural use for vehicles, and then have this as a second one.
Yes, but I think Ernie's question was, do we then add the word not screened on the other one? I think we can kind of leave it probably the way it is, but I'd have to look at it, which maybe Nan is doing right now. But do people think, first of all, is the basic idea even worth pursuing? Do people like the idea of trying to have some screening if it's going to be in a hamlet area?
I have my hand up. I don't know if.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see it. Go ahead.
This seems like an awful lot of trouble to be. What are we just covering? Like one example, like one person's screening, one person's storage area, or what? This just seems like an awful lot of trouble in word parsing for.
No, the opposite. There is an existing storage structure that would actually meet this definition.
Yeah.
I'm trying to, in planning for the future of Caroline, make sure that other storage areas in hamlet zones similarly meet what that person has done all on their own. And maybe we don't want to just trust to that they will do that. So it's not trying to make something around to fit, it's not to fit just one person. It's other uses like this. That's, I guess, what I'd say.
I mean, maybe I'm being naive about this, but if there was somebody next to me was storing stuff and I didn't want to see it, I would plant screening in my yard. Like I wouldn't depend on them. If you're going to accept plantings, then and if it bothered me, I would plant them in my yard.
Nan.
No, I just wanted to, so our original was simply staging, storage, or parking areas as a non-residential use, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And the conversation led us, so there's now a two-part. One is open staging, storage, or parking area. That's an unenclosed, just open area. That's the one that may need the view, screened from view. And the other part was an enclosed, so one was an unenclosed area. The other part was a structure. So by changing enclosed / covered to an area screened from view seems to be the same thing as an open staging, storage, or parking area, just with the screen from view added on it. So I think that's somewhat a duplication or an expansion of the open staging, storage, or parking area that was added as a result of last week's or whenever the last meeting was.
Okay, so Bill, I'm going back to you. What do you want to do?
I mean, what Nan said is exactly what I was trying to do. I'm trying to make a slight change to what would otherwise be an open lot storage area, which I consider to be fine typically in much of the ag rural area, because it's a typical ag use as well as non-ag use, and certainly find the focus commercial, but I wouldn't find that acceptable in a hamlet zone. So yes, I was only trying to make that or screening a requirement if you're going to store in the hamlet zone. That could also be a design constraint in the zoning law rather than a definitional change.
Okay, so
And I don't care which it is, and people may want to, again, it's not a huge deal.
Ernie,
Yeah, my question is, so we had a proposal on the table to allow this sort of thing in the other hamlet areas, was that it?
Well, we have not yet had that motion, but I think that would be the next step.
This is where we're headed, presumably.
Yeah.
And so the question is if these are subject to some sort of site plan review, then I think that is addressed at that point pretty adequately without having to actually legislate at the definition level.
Yeah, I think that has now come to me as a good solution, but let's see what Nan has to say.
Nan?
Yeah, typically we don't want to put regulations in the definition. So I would, if you want to say open storage in enclosed, whatever categories you have, the definition is, I think that would be better. It would probably be easier. I don't know. Yeah, I don't want to say that. I don't know. I'm confused at what you're trying to get at, to be totally honest. Because definition is we have two kinds of staging, storage, or parking. One is open, one is enclosed. So I don't know if you're trying to get rid of the enclosed, if you're trying to expand it. I
think I've got it here.
To get through here.
All right, so I'm going to withdraw both of these alternate motions, go back to Barb's original motion, which started this whole cascade of events, which was to permit with SUP staging, storage, parking areas in Slaterville Springs, Caroline Center, and Speedsville. But I'm going to add, as a second part of the motion, that we then add a design standard in the hamlet zone section that any such staging, storage, parking area be screened from view. Does that, Ernie, does that sort of capture where you were going? And I think it's very wise.
Well, I mean, I guess I'm just, in site plan review, there's all these considerations for landscaping and blah, 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 blah. We already have it. Why do we need to create it again? I guess I just.
Okay. If you think that will actually happen in site plan review.
Would, but at least it's the venue where it could happen. So I think it's just a kind of a question of, when the project comes up for review, the board there to review it, there's a public hearing, people who live next door have a chance to kind of weigh in. They say, I don't want to be looking at your spools of cable. And so the board can say, okay, can you plant some bushes? Owner says, okay, end of story.
Okay, so let's do this to get this done. I will move this second part. And it can then either be not seconded or we can vote on it. And then if it's not in the law, then as Ernie says, it'll just happen as part of the SUP process, because that can be part of it. But at least let us move on to then consider Barb's original motion. And we won't be bogged down in wondering about things anymore.
So you're saying the second part, what do you mean by the second part?
So this thing where I say add a design standard in the hamlet zones, and I'm not even sure I'm in favor of that right now, okay? But I want to know if anybody else is. Is anybody in favor of adding a design standard that firmly states, not just leave it to the public process later on, but firmly states that any such staging, storage, parking area should be screened from view? Is there any support on the zoning commission for adding that as a design standard?
No.
Okay, so we are done. See how fast that was? All right, so I am now going to move the original motion, which is that indeed we add the ability to have such staging storage parking area back to the original definition, doesn't need open or enclosed anymore, and that it be permitted with special use permit to these districts. And Barb, I don't know, I mean, are you still in favor of all those districts? I hadn't really thought that part through.
I declined to make that motion.
You still declined to make it entirely.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
So
Well,
Bill is
fine.
moving that. Does he have a second? I don't see a second.
Wait a second. What's he moving?
He is moving.
Hey,
So Bill, just
I-
to
I'm
clarify,
moving-
Are you moving that as it is written up there on the screen?
Yes.
Yes. And I'm
It's a-
open to friendly amendments to change which districts we are adding it to.
Cool Springs.
Ernie? I couldn't hear you.
I'm
Ernie
just
is-
trying. I'm
Ernie
trying
is
to
reading.
catch up.
Oh,
So we're going to permit it in all areas except for Hamlet Brooktondale with a SUP. Is that?
And
is
Center Brooktondale
and Center Brooktondale.
and West Sladeville.
and Beesimer, I assume he's not.
And Beesmer. Okay, I will second that motion.
Okay, that's Bill and Ernie. Do we have any more discussion? Please, God, no. All in favor of this motion, say aye.
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 Anyone else? That fails. Thank you. Okay. We're going on then, I think, to Bill about a riparian buffer.
Right. Okay, so at the previous meeting, we held a vote at which we decided we support the riparian buffer as we had developed it in terms of the 100-foot width and everything. But of course, we had lots of discussion about that. And so I'm now proposing that we add a recommendation to the report, giving some advice to the town board, because this is a tricky issue. It's a tricky issue, or at least a bit of a dilemma, because, houses, these are old historical, hamlets that grew up right along the shores of streams in town. So there's a lot of structures very close to the stream in Sladeville Springs and Brooktondale particularly. So the recommendation would read as follows, and this can be wordsmithed in this week or tonight. But my recommendation of this basically, in essence, says we think the 100 feet's a good idea and give some supporting documentation for that. But we acknowledge that there are a lot of houses really close to the streams, and this leads to a trade-off between protection of water quality and protection of landowner rights. And therefore, we're going to make the following set of recommendations to the town board. That is, that they explore the implications of first accepting the recommendation as it stands, which is for a 100-foot riparian buffer around perennial streams, or maybe reducing that buffer width in the hamlets most strongly affected, or reducing the buffer width in all the hamlet districts, or finally, possibly reducing the buffer width throughout the town. So it gives the board a hierarchy of things to consider. It stakes out and gives them information that they can follow up on as to where they can read more about buffer width here, and a reference to the DEC and something Tompkins County has put out. So that would be along those lines is what I am moving that we include in the report.
Okay, Bill has moved that. Does he
I'll
have a
second.
second? Barb has seconded that. Discussion.
I would like to make a friendly amendment.
Well, it's up to me to decide if it's friendly, Ernie.
All right, if we're here, we will see how friendly this is. I think that we should also mention that it would also be possible to relax some of the prohibitions of what is allowed in the buffer zone. When we first started discussing this, my kind of general feeling about this was that, yeah, the buffer zone is going to be this, this area drawn on a map. If you fall into the map, then, then the discussion starts to ensue about what you're going to do. And then somehow that morphed into, no, if you're in that map, you can't do this. You are severely restricted no matter what, unless you're able to somehow demonstrate that you're outside the buffer. And that recognizing also that there are a whole lot of properties where, you know, you say, yeah, you want to add onto your house over there in the lawn area that has got 3 cars parked, you know, fine, go for it. You know, that's a much better thing to have there than those 3 cars parked there. So, so anyway, that, I just wanted to add that line.
So
And-
what's the
and
line?
Ernie,
saying,
I
number 5?
will take that as a friendly amendment, because actually that was something that at one point I just about, I sort of had indicated that. What I will want to make sure it's clear that we are talking about the riparian buffer zone, because later on, we're going to come talk about the whole water resources overlay as well, in terms of what's prohibited or not prohibited by the language we have. So I want to make sure you really meant just the riparian buffer area in what you just were talking about.
Everything, but you know, that
I think he's accepting as a friendly amendment that.
Yes.
Are you happy with that?
I'm happy to that for that. So, I
What
may have-
joy.
I may have
Okay.
another friendlier amendment.
My hand is up.
Michelle,
So could you tell me what this friendly amendment is exactly?
It is to add the following phrase, number 5, reducing. So one of the suggestions to the town board that they consider exploring in terms of the trade-offs between having a buffer that protects the stream and having a buffer that also impacts landowners with many houses close to the stream, is another option would be reducing the prohibitions on what is allowed in the riparian buffer area. Again, the prohibitions we put in place are exactly the ones recommended by the Tompkins County Sustainability Department, but you know, again.
Okay, and this is just a recommendation to the town board, because I mean, I think there
Yes.
is some expertise on the town board in the areas of biology and ecology. I don't think we have to spell everything out for them. But if this is just a recommendation, I'm happy to go along with it.
okay, any other discussion? Let's vote on that. So this is Bill's motion with Barb's seconding and Ernie's friendly amendment. And Barb, you accept that as well?
I do.
Okay. With all of that, it's this paragraph about starting with the recommended for riparian buffer zones and ending with number 5. All those in favor of putting that into the recommendation section of the preliminary report, say aye.
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 Bruce? Aye? Aye. Okay, that is approved unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to Bill, changing the riparian buffer area to the inner buffer area and change riparian buffer setback area to outer buffer area everywhere. And your rationale is that this change makes what is being talked about more obvious. So he's found that he's talking with people that inner and outer does help.
Second,
And I do want to point out the one oddity, which is, again, since the intermittent stream only has a 50-foot buffer, the intermittent stream will have an inner buffer only. And that might lead someone to be looking for the outer buffer when they have an intermittent stream. But if you get rid of the word inner, then you really have 3 different things you have to wind up regulate, writing regulations for rather than just 2. So I don't know. But I do point out that oddity.
no, this makes it much easier for even me, and I've read this thing 5 times.
Okay, any other discussion on that?
Did
All in
anybody
favor?
second it?
I
Yes,
did.
Ernie did. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said, Michelle.
Aye, I said aye.
Aye. Okay, that is unanimously approved. And we will probably Nan will probably find somewhere to note the oddity, which I believe is Bill.
Hey,
Hey, okay. Bill, let's go on to your next thing, which is all as one motion, which is about outdoor lighting, signage,
Yeah.
and
So-
explain
Yeah,
this.
so this has to do with design standards for home businesses. And I'm trying to in some sense maybe simplify, but so I really feel that minor home occupations can have, right now, it can have a little lighter set of design requirements than major ones, which is true now, but it just felt a little heavy in the document. So right now, what it says, and this applies to both minor and major home occupations, is that they must meet all outdoor lighting, noise, signage, landscaping, and parking requirements of this zoning law for commercial structures. And we had a bit of this discussion last time, but I think of this zoning law can include Article 7 the Article 7, which has all the standards in 7.4, where for lighting in particular, there's some fairly, somewhat involved things that I don't think most minor home businesses need to actually worry about whether they comply. So here's my proposed slimming that I hope still meets the goals of what we're trying to do. And that is that in the minor home occupation section was 6.5.b, that we add a sub-point 5 that says, because right now, this language was not in the B and C sections, it was in the A section, applied to both. So it comes out of the A section, and we're going to put pieces of it in B and C. So in the part for minor home occupations, it says that they have to meet all the signage, parking, and outdoor lighting requirements of section 6.2. You will note there is no noise mentioned there. And that's, I think, an important discussion point. The reason there's no noise there is that there are no noise standards in section 6.2. So it seems silly to put them in this line. But that does mean a minor home occupation is not subject to any noise standard whatsoever. And either we say that's fine, because minor home occupations typically aren't going to be a problem in that regard, or we say it's fine because we'll hope it's okay, or we add a noise section to Article 6.2, or we go back to saying that minor home occupations have to pay attention to the noise standard of 7.4. So there's various ways this could be fixed if people are concerned about the noise, the lack of a noise requirement on minor home occupations. Then when you turn over to major home occupations, there's where it says they have to meet all the design standards of, and it should actually say 6.2 here, I think. That was my bad. And this language is already in there. Oh, no, sorry, this is what was in there. Okay. So what was in there was that the major one could use 100% of accessory building, and they had to meet design standards of 6.1, which maybe was a mistake. Maybe it's supposed to be 6.2. And they had to meet the appropriate standards of Article 7.4, and appropriate was determined by the review board. I'm separating that out and saying we still say that thing about 100% of accessory building, though we can talk about that part later. And that indeed they have to meet all the relevant design standards of 6.2, and the appropriate standards of 7.4 is determined by the review board. So on a major home occupation, there is no change. It's split into two lines. But other than that, it has the same requirements. What's happened is that minor home occupations are now only subject to 6.2 rather than anything potentially from 7.4, even though 7.4 was never specifically mentioned in regard to a minor home occupation. When it says this zoning law, I found that to be a bit of a broad reference. So that is what that's the back end of my thinking.
Okay, Bill has moved this. Does anyone want to second all of that?
I'll second all of that.
Thank you, Barb. Does anyone want to discuss this?
I'm just trying to think of what a minor home occupation that would make too much noise would be, and I really can't think of it.
Chainsaw carving.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is my new,
Yep.
I'm going into it like next week. Yeah, I'm down with this. It just seems like so much fun.
It's gonna be noisy.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, I think once we get into the noise thing, we're just getting into a
Let's
raft
just
of stuff.
let's kill ourselves
that
now.
we Do
Yeah.
not want to deal with.
Right. Michelle,
My assumption would be if it's a minor home occupation, the thing about a minor home occupation is it should be indistinguishable from, just living in your house, and that we don't have noise requirements for people living in their homes. So
right.
I'm comfortable not addressing noise as far as minor home occupations.
Okay, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Hi.
Any opposed? That passes
What-
unanimously. Oops.
I didn't say anything. What do we,
And
Agree.
all of those things, all that you see on the screen there.
The whole set,
Okay,
including
right.
yeah.
I'll either say aye or I can abstain because I really couldn't follow it all. So,
Okay, I'm having Michelle abstain.
okay.
Thank
have me
you.
abstain.
Okay, and Bill, there is one more on this piece of paper, which is move bill, add clarifying language to section 5.1A. And you're adding what's added in yellow there.
Yeah, and again, here, what we had was certainly fine, but at first glance, since it says that no building can be occupied or altered unless in conformity with the regulations, that seemed a little odd, since of course buildings can be occupied and not be in conformity because there are non-conforming structures. So all this, if they were in existence at the time zoning was passed. So all this says is clarifies to the person who's scanning quickly through the draft law that there is a grandfathering clause. So don't worry if your house is right next to the stream and you're non-conforming because you're in the buffer zone, don't worry, you can still live there. So all it does is add the clarifying phrase, except as allowed in Article 9 for lawful lots, building structures, or uses of premises existing at the time of enactment of this local law. So I think, and Nan, correct me, that does not change the meaning at all of this, but does add clarification that there are things that are grandfathered.
I'll second it.
Bill and Barb, thank you. Anyone have anything to say? Seems reasonable. All in favor, say aye.
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 Approved. Okay, the last thing on that page was by Barb, and I think it's been expunged.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so Bill, show me the next page so I'll know which is page 3.
So the next page, which is actually, for you, it's gonna, because we added words, it's slightly, it's paginated differently for a fancy word there.
Okay.
But you should be going to the one that talks about
Ernie.
maximum building footprints, Ernie, and then my set of sizes.
Okay, that sounds fine. So Ernie. This is delete the maximum building footprint of a single non-residential commercial structure row in
Yeah.
the use table.
I mean, we have this kind of two-tiered thing in a couple of districts where you can build a single building up to a certain size. And then if you want to make it bigger, you can do that, but it has to, for all intents and purposes, appear to be a second building. And I think that this is unnecessary and is confining for businesses that need just one big honking building. My argument is that I don't think that buildings of the scale that we're talking about are out of character with the town, and in that the regulations that we have govern use as well as area, that the regulations in the use tables already kind of tamp down the concerns about parking and pollution and resource use and all that other stuff to a certain degree, so that we do not have to further regulate on the basis of the square footage, because I feel this is purely an aesthetic point and isn't really it is contrary to allowing a reasonable use of someone's property.
Okay, so you're moving this. Do I have a second for Ernie's deleting?
No, well, one clarifying thing is we will then need to revise the footprint allowances to reflect that.
Would you accept what goes next that Bill has put up there?
Almost.
Okay. Well, let's
Well, sure, let's deal with building sizes and then come back to Ernie's motion.
Yeah.
okay, so we are moving ahead. We are tabling the part and going on to move alternate B. This is Bill, and Bill is moving this. Does someone want a second Bill?
I'll second for purposes of discussion.
Thank you, Barb. Okay, so we have this. I think we can all read what it is.
Yeah, so,
Wants to
you know,
support,
if we're opening discussion, I will discuss.
discuss.
All right. So, this puts together a bunch of thoughts, and you guys all got sent some tables of building sizes, both in Caroline and in the county. And I'll probably flash one of those up in a minute. But it does indeed reflect some concerns expressed by some town residents that the building sizes were too small to actually function and to allow, you know, businesses to establish. And it hinges on what one means by small, because I think we all have to agree that the comprehensive plan uses the word small, and we in the zoning law use the word small scale, you know, as the standard for business. It says, you know, we support small businesses, you know, in town. The comp plan certainly has language that says, you know, it says that having local businesses and having businesses in town adds to the vibrancy of the community. And so having them is important. So the comp plan speaks to the importance of having some businesses, but clearly says we want them to be small businesses, not huge, you know, whatever that is. So now we have to decide what is small and what is huge. And the question is, were the numbers we had in previous to this small, medium, tiny, large, and, you know, it's hard to know. So Ernie and then I did some poking around at what's out there, you know, in the area, and, you know, found that, you know, what I saw is, yes, there are some businesses that are 1,000 to 2,000 square feet, but there's a lot that are 3,000 to 4,000 square feet, and things that we might easily want to have here. And that, again, I may pull that table up a little bit as the discussion progresses. So I was in agreement that something like 4,000 might be more appropriate for the hamlets, but some of those maybe should be 3,000 instead. I don't know. The other thing is, you know, I went and I talked to our local cabinet maker, and as a proxy for someone else who's trying to build something inside a building. And, you know, the impression I got was that 6,000-7,000 square feet of interior space is definitely handy when you're trying to construct a bunch of stuff, have stock on hand, all that kind of stuff. And when we previously had like a 3,000 square foot building space allowed in the ag zone, that then we probably wouldn't have too many other cabinet makers or similar sort of light industrial uses. So that was my impetus for moving that up. I will point out that the total footprints in general aren't that different from where we're just had. It is larger for a total footprint from 6,000 to 7,500 in the ag rural zone. So that's an increase. It's, yes, an increase in the focus commercial. And my point there is that maybe, yeah, there should be one place in town where we can let some really large businesses establish. That may not everyone maybe agree. You know, that's the point of the discussion. Bessemer, yeah, this might be one that maybe be better at 3,000 than 4,000. I think at 2,000, it really, there are a lot, it's much harder to fit any real business there. Maybe that's the goal. Brookendale is not changed in total footprint. Center Brookendale is a relatively minor bump up. Slaterville Springs, the total footprint is unchanged. West Slaterville, a slight bump up. Speedsville, a slight bump up. Caroline Center, the total footprint would be unchanged. All of the difference is that you'd allow a single large building of 4,000 in some of these places. And the big difference, in addition to the focus commercial, is in Caroline. And I think we'll need to have a discussion about that as to whether that is appropriate or not. And the rationale for doing that has to do with its extensive frontage on Route 79. And the rationale for not doing it is, you know what, there isn't a single darn commercial use there right now. And is this really what that community wants? So that is sort of where I came from on these numbers. We can delve into some of the stuff on the table if people, you know, want to go there, but that's my pitch.
So Jean, how would you like to handle if there are suggestions to change some of these numbers? Bill is moving that and I seconded as the package.
Right.
But what if somebody wants to suggest a change to one or more numbers? How would you like to handle that?
We can
series of friendly amendments.
Well, I think a series of proposed amendments, and if they're friendly, they're friendly. If they're not, the amendment is debated. Is that right, Jean?
Yeah, I would do a series of amendments. I think that makes sense. So,
So I'd like to offer an amendment.
sure.
So for Beesmer, I'd like to offer an amendment for both columns, single and total. Just change to 3,000.
So you're saying 3,000 to 3,000.
Move
And
single
both?
building from 2,000 to 3,000 and total footprint 2,000 to 3,000.
Okay. Is that a friendly amendment, Bill? And,
Actually, I will take that as a friendly amendment. Yeah.
okay. We're gonna vote on a friendly amendment, and then we go back and vote.
Can I just make a general comment about here?
Sure.
Throughout all this discussion, I've had the question of I have yet to find another zoning ordinance anywhere in New York State that limits building size. And so and Bill has pointed out that there are some ways to cheat the system by, building onto lot lines and then annexing lots and one thing and another, which basically makes it rather difficult to legislate, and he has some ideas about this that we'll discuss later. But I just want everybody to understand that I think are getting into a little bit of uncharted territory. Now, Nan has said that this is not uncommon, but I haven't found a case, so I'm just want to throw that out there. Okay, I'm done with that.
Okay, Michelle? I can't hear you. Michelle?
Yep, sorry. And there I was telling you I had my hand up and you didn't even know. Okay. Yeah, I guess I don't want to second guess Nan. So it kind of, I don't know. I kind of feel like saying, well, Nan said this, but I've never found an example of that. I'm not on board with that. And what I want to point out is I think the 10,000 square feet numbers for what's it, Sladeville Springs and Caroline are huge. And just looking at the, say, common buildings that we have, like say Dandy Mini Mart, that seems large to me. And that's 5,300 square feet, right? And delivery, which is in Beesmer, goes along with what Barb suggested of 3,000 feet. And I would agree with that amendment and changing some of the other 4,000 numbers to 3,000 as well. But I guess my main thing is what do we need? What business would need 10,000 square feet in Sladeville Springs and Caroline when we don't have, right now, what we have is like 6,000 would be the high number. So I just think those numbers are too high.
All right,
Okay.
and again, I apologize. I still can't figure out how to raise my hand when I'm in share mode. But if someone else wants to speak, they should, but I'm raising my hand, so put me in the queue, I guess.
You're good.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead, Bill, and then I'll go to Bruce.
Right. So, several options. So, a bank might typically have, I think, certainly the one I think I pointed out in Dryden had a footprint close to 10,000 square feet. And quite frankly, a Dollar General or a similar retailer like that has a footprint 10,000 square feet. So, any not huge, but still significant retailer, that's not an uncommon size for, from what I know. Now, Nan has broader experience than I, so I will defer to that. But I think there are not many, but a few uses. And, in terms of the total, that's a single building. I agree that in terms of total size, then you really might need to go to 10,000 square. If you want an Agway in Sladeville Springs, then by the time they have a storefront and a warehouse, again, even the one in Dryden has about 7,000, 8,000 square feet of total space. So, in terms of a single building, then you're talking making allowance for a place that might, want to have a pretty big footprint like a significant retailer, which some in the town support. So that's where that 10,000 number comes from.
Michelle, is your hand still up? I can't tell.
I was gonna make another comment, but I just can't remember. I'm
Okay.
gonna lower my hand. Okay.
Bruce,
I was just wondering, because down below here, we're gonna reopen the discussion about the partial for the focus district area. I'm just thinking maybe we want to discuss that before we change any numbers.
I guess I'm gonna work on this and then we'll go to the focus district area because we're here. I just don't want to move ahead.
Well, if we change numbers, we might have to go back if something
Yeah,
happens.
yeah.
All right, and actually, I just reviewed my number. I think the Agway building in Dryden is 6,000 square feet and their warehouse is 7,000 square feet.
Okay.
And I just,
Ernie,
and I guess I'm generally in favor of these slightly enlarged. I think that the 4,000 number kind of is pretty good throughout there. The one that I really kind of object to is the limit of ag rural at 7,500 square feet. I think that there are, looking at the uses that would actually be allowed in the ag rural, some of those could be larger, and shouldn't necessarily be limited. So in keeping with scale of other agricultural buildings in the area, I am suggesting that we revise that to 15,000 square feet.
okay, so you're making that a friendly amendment.
That's a friendly.
Well, he's
And-
making the
and so-
amendment, which is not accepted as friendly. I'm happy to have discussion of it though, so. Yeah.
Okay, so it's not accepted as a friendly, we'll come back to it.
Okay.
First, we're going to vote on the Spiesmer article amendment that Barb brought up.
Well, so it's a question, if I accept it as a friendly amendment, does it actually get voted on separately?
Yes,
Okay,
so what does that mean?
yeah.
Does that mean you're
Oh, I'm
second?
fine with it. I thought a friendly amendment meant I was really modifying my motion and then making that the motion. So I'm a little rusty on parliamentary procedure, so.
This is a friendly amendment, which means that we're going to vote on these amendments separately. You always vote on the amendments separately, and then we come back to the main amendment, the main motion. So,
Okay,
okay,
all right.
so what I'm hearing is, would we put this in? And the first one is the Barb thing of changing Beesmer from 4,000 to
Highlighted-
3,000.
Highlighted number. right
Yes.
there. Yes.
So all in favor of doing that, say aye.
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 Bruce, was that an aye?
Yeah.
Okay, okay, that's approved unanimously. And then we have Ernie's of changing the ag rural from 7,500 to,
15,000.
In both columns?
Well, I've suggested that we eliminate the.
I
first column.
understand that, but we
Yes.
haven't done that.
Yes, both columns.
okay, and Bill, are you saying that you will accept that for discussion?
Well, sure, I'll second it for the purposes of discussion. Sure. But I'm not accepting it as a friendly amendment,
Okay.
if that
all-
makes a difference.
That's fine. So anyone, Ernie, I think we've heard
You've
your,
heard my point.
I heard your point of view. Anyone have another point of view?
I'm against it, but I don't know.
Yeah, me too. All in favor, say aye.
I-
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That's two ayes. Against?
Aye.
Nay.
Hey, nay. Michelle said nay,
Nay.
and I say nay, so that's four nays. That fails. Okay.
You asked if they're against it, and they said nay.
Whatever. She gets
No
her,
double negatives.
Just saying.
But it's nice to see that you're a grammarian. Okay, anyone else about motions here, amendments? Or do we want to move this whole thing here?
So I do want to point one thing out, because that may change whether someone wants to move anything, that the only column right now in which the single building footprint is different from the total footprint is in the focused commercial district, if I'm reading my numbers properly.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's true.
So we are almost at the point of accepting Ernie's motion, because if the columns are no different, doesn't matter, it is the total footprint that we're talking about. But there's that one important difference in focused commercial, which has to do with the scale of a single building on a parcel. Just want to point that out.
Okay. I don't hear any other discussion.
Well, I would,
Yep, go ahead.
so if we're gonna pass this one without revisiting the other ones, then but no, I don't know. I guess I don't have to address this. I don't,
Okay,
okay.
Bruce,
I'm just still asking the question, should we discuss adding to the focus area before we vote on square footage?
Know that we need.
I don't think we
No.
need to.
It's a different kind of district with a
Yeah.
different kind of definition and use.
Okay, Michelle?
So we're gonna vote on this as is because, I mean, there are others that I wouldn't mind changing from 4,000 to 3,000. If we
Well-
vote on it as is, I would have to say no, but
Well, make your motion then. What do you want to change?
I guess I would change, let's see, it's hard to read this. Oh, West Sladeville from, instead of having it to go up to 4,000, I would say again, 3,000.
So you would leave it as a. Okay, anything else?
Well. Yeah, I just don't know if I can vote for this. Never mind. I guess that's my suggestion there. I just still think the 10,000 square feet
Okay,
for is huge.
So you're withdrawing that motion.
I'll withdraw it. Yeah.
So we're back to this entire thing. So everyone in favor of voting for this with the yellow and the blue changes as they're made.
Well, we didn't change the blue. The only change was yellow.
Right.
So I'm gonna unhighlight these, I guess, that we're all clear on that.
Just with the yellow change.
Oh, just the yellow change. That's right.
Say aye.
Aye.
I
Aye.
Bruce?
I guess I get to say nay. I'm gonna say nay.
Okay, so then we have Bill and Barb and Bruce have said aye.
I said nay.
Bill and Barb have said aye. And Michelle has said nay, and Bruce has said nay. And Ernie has said nay.
Can I change my vote?
Yes.
Goodness.
So what's your vote?
Aye.
Aye. So that's 3, and I'm saying nay, and so to me, this fails. We don't have enough
Right.
ayes.
Right, we were 3-3, right?
3. So this has failed. So. In that case, going back to deleting the maximum building footprint, it doesn't make a lot of sense, does it?
Well, it's still.
It still would.
It's still
Okay.
a question.
Okay, so it's a question. So do you want to, that was Ernie's, delete the maximum building footprint?
No, delete the
Single.
Single,
Single.
a single non-residential
So
commercial
everything, so
structure.
there would just be one maximum. You know,
Okay.
Each district would have its own maximum.
And I will second that motion.
Okay, so that's Ernie and Bill.
And so just for clarity, that would be essentially what it would leave is if you look at the total footprint
Yep,
column, it would leave all those first numbers.
exactly.
Correct.
Okay.
No, it would leave all the total numbers.
Yeah, in this line here, so for ag rural, 6,000, focus commercial 15, and on down in this first row. First column of the second set of columns.
Right, okay. Any discussion on that?
Yeah, I'll make an amendment. I'll suggest an amendment.
Okay,
I'll suggest changing the total footprint allowed in Beesmer from 2,000 to 3,000.
I'll second that.
and Bill? I don't hear any discussion, so all in favor of that, say aye.
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 Aye. Aye,
Is
that
the-
passes.
Am I to understand that the ag rural is only 6,000?
Correct.
At the moment, we're just voted on just voted on the motion of changing Beesmer to 3,000.
Right.
Okay, any other changes to this column? That is the column that has the blue thing in it?
Yes, I will make a motion to change the total footprint in ag rural to 7,500.
Okay. Do I have a second for that?
I'm lost. I thought that was already there.
No,
No,
it's
okay.
just that first set of numbers in the total column, in the total footprint column. is what
And I'll
is-
second that.
Okay, so that's Barb and Bill. All in favor of that, say aye.
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 Michelle,
Nay,
I'm an aye.
I'm an A. I'd rather it's bigger.
I do too, but.
Okay. so
Sometimes you
that's-
gotta get what you can get, Bruce.
yeah, strange alliances here. Okay,
Okay, so that's 4 ayes and 2 nays who were Bruce and Michelle. And that passes. Any other amendments to this? Hearing no other amendments, we go back to delete the maximum building footprint of a single non-residential commercial structure row. And we're using this total footprint then in this first column.
So I mean,
All-
are folks clear what we're voting on, or should I read off the numbers that we're actually voting on?
Let's read them off, because I can't
All right.
see.
In the ag rural, okay, so there would be no single building footprint limit. There would, however, be a, if we accept the amendment, that's what we're voting on. And there would, however, be a limit on the total building footprint on a commercial parcel, commercial building footprint on a parcel. And in the ag rural zone, that is 7,500 square feet. In the focused commercial, that would be 15,000 square feet. In Bessemer, it would be 3,000. In Brooktondale, it would be 4,000. In Center Brooktondale, it would be 3,000. In Slaterville Springs, it would be 10,000. In West Slaterville, 3,000. Speedsville, 4,000. Caroline Center, 4,000. Caroline, 4,000.
Yep. All in favor of that, say aye.
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 Michelle,
I'm not in favor of it. Nay,
Bruce,
Nay.
I'm an aye, so that passes. Okay. I'm gonna go down the list here. Reduce the minimum commercial lot size in the Center, Brooktondale, and Slaterville Springs Hamlet districts to 0.5 acres. Bill, your rationale was that these are densely developed areas and many, if not most, lots along the main roads in these districts are less than 1 acre. Without this change, there are not many lots that meet the minimum commercial lot size requirements. Does anyone want to second that?
I'll second it.
Bill and Barb? Is there any discussion of that?
Just want to thank Bill for bringing that up and doing the research.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any
aye,
opposed? I'm an aye, that passes unanimously. Bill, change the zoning district of parcel 9-1-29-2 Red Barn Cabinets from West Slaterville to the agricultural rural district and continue the West Slaterville Hamlet district boundary along the edge of parcel 9.1 dash, whatever the hell it is. -1, rather than.
How about I
10
show the map?
parcel.
Yeah.
Show me the map, yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna have to stop sharing the document and I'll pull up the map, I hope, at least.
Even though I believe that I've now memorized all the lot numbers in the
Yeah,
town.
let's see now. There we go.
Michelle has her hand up.
Michelle, you have your hand up?
well, I have a question for Bill when he shows the map.
Yeah, so I have to find the tab in my here that has the map. And you're probably seeing a table right now.
Yeah.
And yeah, oh, let's see. Let me just try this. Excuse me, I have to go looking for it. I thought I had it pulled up, but obviously, oh, this is because it's Word. Never mind. That was the wrong thing to share. All right. So we'll try again.
Be careful.
Yeah, well, you know, I tried to be good about this so that but I don't see it. Why is it not here? Okay, let me just find it because I somehow don't have that PDF.
I'm going to turn to.
Yeah, I mean, I have the PDF open on my desktop. It's just not showing up in the share dialog box. I don't know. Let's see. This is the map I want to show. I'm going to try one last time here. and see if I can share the appropriate thing. There it is. Okay. There you go. And I will zoom in a bit so you guys can see this better. Where's the? All right. Is that legible, visible?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
essentially, the pink is West Sladeville.
Right. And so what I'm suggesting is taking this parcel here, which is indeed the Red Barn Cabinets, and adding it into the ag rural zones, the yellow. And what we had done is, because this was included, the district boundary went straight across, but this is not a parcel boundary right here. This part here is all one parcel. So I said, put this and this back in the ag zone, so that the boundary is now a parcel boundary. And that's what those things mentioned. So this is the first parcel mentioned. This is the northern part of the second parcel mentioned. And I think particularly, again, there's about 8,000 square feet of shop floor space in this structure. If you look at it, it kind of looks very barn and rural-like to me, both from our sizes and from sort of appearances. It fits better in the ag rural zone, and that's why I'm suggesting this change.
So my
Also,
question-
a lot of this is good farmland down here, certainly, as I want to keep this in farmland and not turn this into West Sladeville.
I second that.
Yes, you may
Oh,
second
sure.
that. So you actually had already seconded it. So Michelle,
Oh, I guess my question was, what about the next parcel up? What do you think about including that as well?
It's currently, maybe, I don't know. I don't know enough about it.
Okay.
I guess I would say. And I think that what we were trying to do is add territory to allow future residential expansion of the West Sladeville hamlet. And if that's going to happen, I think this part adjacent to the existing housing makes sense. And again, I know that there was some decent, it's not prime farmland, but it's pretty high quality state land, designated good farmland down here. And I'm unclear on this parcel. And then you start getting into the, water zone. So
Okay.
I think I'll leave it the way it is.
Okay.
Cornfield right now.
It's terrible in there.
okay. I don't hear any more discussion of this motion. Anyone all in favor, say aye.
All right.
And I say aye. That's approved. Thank you.
Fine.
Okay. Bruce, reopen discussion of adding parcels to the focus commercial district. Note that the two specific suggestions were from one commentator were corner of Ellis Hollow and Route 79 and midline and Route 79. Bill, do you have a map that could show us what they're talking about?
I could. I don't currently have it open, but that would be a matter of a minute. So if Bruce wants to talk while I struggle with that, that's fine.
Yeah, I was more or less thinking of going from somewhere like this side of Deerfield Lane or Deerfield Lane to Beesmer Road. And Michelle, that's why I brought that up, because I did count residents before I came to this meeting. And there was 4 or 5 commercial and there was like 23 residents. Not 110.
I think the difference is you counted houses along the road, and what Renee was saying was that she was counting houses that you might not be able to see from the road, but there were between 2/10 of a mile and 4/10 of a mile back.
I counted everything that had a driveway on 79 houses.
I really don't think there's any point in basically saying.
I'm bringing it up.
You're calling her a liar, and I don't think that's appropriate.
Oh, no, I'm not. She called me a liar. She said I said, and I did not.
Let's stop this.
Can you stop this?
I wasn't doing anything wrong. You were out of line to say something to me.
We're not gonna do this.
So
No
Bruce,
ad hominem.
is Bruce making a motion? I'm unclear.
It's unclear what the motion is.
Okay, so I now have a map up that I will share in a second. So I need to stop that share and share the map. What I will say in defense of everybody is that what was going on is a difference in definition of what being on 79 means. So it depends how far off of 79. So Bruce is, I'm sure, right that he counted driveways that came to 79. The other speaker counted houses that were close to 79, but didn't have driveways in 79. That led to the difference in the two numbers. Neither one of them is being diabolical. They had different methodologies. There was another statement in which a certain statement was attributed to you, Bruce, that was done in error as opposed to impugn your character. So that was simply a mistake and it got corrected as to who made the proper statement. That is, as I see it, what was going on. So here's the focused commercial district as we have it currently.
Yep.
And what Bruce was talking about, I think, is somewhat in this direction. As you're going, so we are at the pink, and you were doing properties north and south, or just north or just south, and on the east side or the west side of the existing pink.
North and south side of 79 and down 79 to Beesmer Road is what I was thinking.
Okay.
So
I
Bill,
wasn't sure how.
Yeah, I'm looking. I got Deerfield Lane here, so Beesimer is gonna be.
It's off the map.
Yeah, that's what I'm realizing. It's you're talking all the way then down to Beesimer. Thank you. Yes, I was like, hey, wait a minute, it's not here yet. So you're talking about from here to here at Beesimer. And would you say every parcel that touches Route 79?
Yep, not Beesmer Hill Road, but Beesmer Road.
Yes.
Well, yeah, here's, so one more parcel over, Beesimer Road.
Yeah.
Right. And if you, like I said, there's a lot of open space. Jay Franklin from the said that this is the main commercial corridor for Ithaca, New York, from the town of Caroline. It just makes sense to me that we should have some area for bigger focused commercial where it should be.
so your suggestion here is you're making a motion to,
Well, I'm not quite sure how wide we should make it. Whether you would take in all the green, I don't believe so, but that's why I said I would like to have a discussion and see what anybody else thinks.
I guess from my point of view, we have discussed this almost
You need a
endlessly.
second. So if
Oh, yeah,
that's
it doesn't
what
have a
you need,
motion.
second.
Right. Does anyone want to? So your motion at this point is to discuss it. Does anyone want to second that?
Second, the discussion.
Yep.
Thanks, Ernie. I was about to do that. I mean,
So you're saying, Ernie, you are.
No, I was questioning that. No, I do not want to second this discussion.
Okay. Bill, do you want to second it?
oh, I'll prolong our agony for 3 minutes. Yeah, I will at least second it for discussion. And what I will say in discussion is what Bruce has suggested to me is a huge expansion and overreach. So, you know, I am not in favor of what he proposed, but I did want to hear the thoughts of at least a few of the zoning commission members, if there was any support for this or something similar or even different.
No, I'm totally opposed to it. I think it has the potential of creating a strip mall on 79, and I just don't think that that's appropriate for the town of Caroline.
I don't think it's in line with the comp plan, but what I read in the comp plan, so I can't support that. Anyone else? Michelle?
Well, I just want to reiterate again, I don't care what Jay Franklin said, that area is not zoned for commercial in Dryden or Ithaca, as far as I can see. That is not a commercial area going into Ithaca. So I don't know why he's saying that. Oops.
Town of Caroline, it's not the town of Dryden.
Okay. You didn't have the floor, but thanks. All in favor? We don't have any, I think we're cutting discussion now. There's nothing else to move on. We're going on to page,
Well, no, we have to have a vote on the motion. I seconded the motion. We've had discussion. We should vote on the motion.
to discuss it.
No,
Anyone
we
want-
did discuss,
discussion?
I thought, we
Yeah.
discussed the amendment.
Wasn't an amendment. There was no motion except to discuss it,
Right.
and we just had a discussion. So
Okay.
Okay,
we're done. We're going on to Bill.
yeah, let me stop this one and I have to share the
While you're
other.
doing this, I'm gonna turn to Tim, because we missed your report. Do you have anything you want to report?
Sorry, I was having an internet problem.
That's what I figured.
What I was going to report, yes, this is almost the last meeting, that's one of the things that I just wanted to put on the record was to thank Mark Whitmer for sitting here for 2 years with his computer, really at his own volition.
With the same
To make sure that these meetings can be broadcast far and wide. So on behalf of the board, thank you very much.
Thank you. And may I say thank you as well. You're our own IT tech
Oh, my God.
and AV guy. Thank you. Okay, let's go back to Bill. Bill, I think you are at,
We're at the last two motions, though the last one's a bunch of points, so we'll see. All right. So there was, and so I think we now should have a discussion of how to handle things. There's a number of suggestions that were made in comments that I don't think we should do. On the other hand, they were very specific suggestions someone made, and I don't know if it's appropriate just if we don't to ignore them, or should we have a motion to not adopt them? And I just don't know the right way forward. And so I guess this was one of those sort of things that I think it had to do with some confusion of the wording in the zoning law. So I'm happy to discuss that. But it was about extending, making sure that the applicant had enough time to do public notice, which sounds appropriate. But if you read the details, you'd have to be a really troublesome review board not to give the applicant that time. So again, we can get into the detail if we actually, so do we want to discuss a motion that I'm saying I want to reject this notion?
no, I don't. Does anyone want to discuss this? I thought this is what's up on the board there. Reject the suggestion that in section 773, that the review board must notify the applicant sooner about the public hearing for a site plan review. It now says that it will give 10 days notice.
So I guess it's the point that I think that what we're saying is that if there's something that someone on the zoning commission wants to affirmatively move that we change, that's what we'll do. We won't move to not do something that someone has proposed. Is that what I'm understanding the process is going to be?
Exactly.
Okay, so I think we decided not, so therefore we won't do this motion because it's that kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would just like to take the time to reiterate that how you just stated that we would handle these things, Bill, unless there's a reason or a purpose or an advocate to bring forward a certain idea that we have not for the past 2 years discussed every particular comment that we have received. On the 215 questions that are answered on the website, a couple of us looked at those in detail, and the items that seemed appropriate for bringing forward to the zoning commission, yes, that was done. But we did not discuss all 215 of those in detail in the commission meetings. Commission members had access to that. And if somebody thought something was important for commission attention, brought that forward. Similarly, we're not taking every single comment given orally at the public hearing and going through each one of those and having a formal response to those. That's not required, and it's very burdensome for a town government body of volunteers to do. So I'm not in favor of taking any particular individual's list of items and going through them one by one and deciding outright to reject them. If somebody on the zoning commission wants to bring forward a motion on any of those topics, great. But that's the purpose of commission members.
Well said.
Thank you. Thank you,
And
Barbara.
I agree, Barb, that's the typical way that a body operates. Like I say, because this was public hearing stuff, I just wanted to throw the idea out, and I am not necessarily advocating or pushing. I accept everything that you said.
Thank you. So that
I said that for the benefit of our youth in the audience who's doing this as a civic study
Yeah.
exercise. So I hope you were listening.
there'll be a test later.
You're gonna be famous someday.
Okay, so then I think that goes to the last item, which I believe is just skipped because I don't see any of us bringing those items up.
I would,
You do?
yeah.
Which one? What do you want to bring up?
Just the one on the first page of Mr. Mix's thing, page 60, about the natural heritage sites, unique natural areas and the scenic resources.
So it says page 60, natural heritage sites, delete these 2 paragraphs and provide a working hyperlink or actual maps that show the actual areas within the town of Caroline that are impacted.
Yeah, I don't know.
This is similar to the point B that I have up on the screen now for those that can read that. And Mr. Biggs was not the only one that mentioned the lack of maps of some of the things that were referred to. So Bruce is moving what?
But I just thought we should discuss it. I don't care about what he said under our natural areas here. I'm just saying, if this is what the review board has to do. I mean, if you want me to read this, then we should have it mapped so that when Joe Q Public looks at the map, he knows what we're talking about when we're talking about the natural heritage sites, unique natural areas, and the scenic resources.
All right, so I'm ready to talk about that when we're having discussion, but again, I can't figure out how to raise my hand.
Then I think we're ready because
Yep.
I see your hand. I see it's raised.
Use your voice.
All right. Bruce, I hear you, and the points of those maps do exist, and they even exist on the town website. They are in the comp plan, a number of them, that has maps, as it says here, of the scenic resources and the unique natural areas. And the town has a natural resources inventory. A link to that is on the planning board webpage. And that inventory has all the maps like of the natural heritage sites as well. So those resources are available, and they are not part of the zoning law. They could potentially be included there for like our new illustrative maps, for information purposes. That's a possibility. I also think a possibility would be to make sure that these maps have a more visible home on the town website, like maybe on the review board page as well, so the review board knows where to find them. But I don't think the maps need to be part of the zoning law. They simply have to be findable to the public and to the town officials who are doing this sort of stuff. So I think my suggestion, and I would move this, is that we add a recommendation in the final section of the report that says, and the town should make sure, these maps are available, easily available on the town website, or something to that effect. That's what I would move. But maybe other people want them actually in the draft law.
So hearing that, Bruce, would you like to second, Bill?
Yes, I would.
Okay, so what I'm taking from that to be a suggestion in the preliminary report that these maps and other similar maps that are mentioned be put on the review board website.
Yes, only it'll be the final report at that point, just to point out.
Praise Lord. Yeah, okay. So with that, all in favor of this,
Aye.
say aye.
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 Great, that's approved unanimously. Thank you.
Okay,
Um,
I move that we discuss item C here, which is design guidelines and how they're presented in the documents.
Yes, I think we should do that, but first I'd like to finish up artist studio space.
Okay, well, I backed off on making any changes in that based on chit chat, but we could talk about it, sure.
Okay, so the artist studio space, I think there was a suggestion.
Other than a single artist or something, as a home other than a home occupation.
Other than a home occupation, exactly. And I think if we added other than a home occupation, then I think we have a good definition. Michelle, who I think you brought this up a couple of times.
Yeah, I guess I was done discussing it, but I think that's an excellent suggestion by Ernie. So I would say to, add those words.
Something like that, or wherever Nan thinks it goes best.
Okay, so I
a
hear
great
that as a motion from Ernie, and I definitely heard Michelle just second that.
Yes.
Thank you, Michelle. That we add that about other than a home occupation and make that clear. Nan, shake your head and tell me that you get that. Yay, okay, thanks.
Nan, do I need to send you anything, or you got it now so I can not send you something?
I'm taking notes as well. I think when you save this file, you can send it to me, but I have I think I got what you're looking for.
Okay, then B on this list, we just already did because it was about maps, etc. C is the design guidelines in general. Bill?
All right, so a few people, it's not a lot of people, but a few people have mentioned to me, both in the public hearings, outside public hearings, what the heck? Do these design guidelines mean anything on the one hand versus you call them guidelines, but boy, those review boards, they can be really stubborn and they can make someone do these. And I've now had a discussion with Nan about this topic. And I'm actually comfortable with the design guidelines as they are in the document for the following reason. That each one starts with a very clear sentence that says these are guidelines and are not anything that you have to do. And having them in the draft law makes them visible. And, there is a possibility, and I think this is what we should discuss, at least discuss this, that if these are sort of really not enforceable anyway, that maybe instead of being in the draft, in the zoning law, that they reside in a separate document that is there again on the review board page, and that there be a line in the zoning law that says, and applicants are encouraged to consult the town's development guidelines and have that housed outside the document. The benefit of that is that if you want to change those design guidelines, you don't have to have a public hearing in a whole town, because it's not a law. It's just a document that the town board can adopt by resolution. And that is how the design guidelines are now outside of our site plan review law. The downside is there are indeed a little less visible over there than if they're right in the draft zoning law, and they may not be revisited ever. Whereas if you are looking at your zoning law every 5 or 6 or 10 years, then you'll be looking at those design guidelines again. So I think there's pros and cons each way. So I want to toss the idea out there for us to think about.
Anyone have anything they want to discuss in this? Barbara shaking her head no. Ernie?
In my mind, at the end of the day, it kind of doesn't matter. So I don't know that we need to go over all that again. I understand that it creates a certain amount of angst, but if you read the document, it's, I think, fairly clear that these are guidelines and are not requirements.
I agree. Bruce?
I agree.
Bruce agrees. Michelle?
No, I agree. I think we've talked about this quite a bit, and I don't think we need to keep talking about it. So I'm
Great. Wonderful. Going on to discuss the not visible from the public way provision of 6.5.1.c.3, screen from view or store within structures. Didn't we just have that
Have
discussion?
your deja vu.
Yeah. I mean,
Well, no, yeah, that was screen from view. This is parking. Okay, this is for major home occupations.
Ah.
So here's the deal, is it doesn't just say you have to screen from view the stuff. If I'm reading this right, it says the structures should not be visible from the public way. And maybe I'm misunderstanding this. It says screen from view or store within structures not visible from the public way or adjacent properties, all exterior storage used in conjunction with the major home occupation. So that to me says that the structure in which you are storing your stuff for your major home occupation should not be visible from the public way or from an adjacent property. And that is incredibly stringent a standard that I actually don't think we need. I want it to be, and maybe I'm misinterpreting it and we can clean the wording up, but I think that the structures, it's okay to have them be visible.
Nan, I see Nan's hand up and I thank the Lord. Thank you, Nan.
I think that is not the right interpretation, and I think what needs to be happening is should be screen from view, comma, or store within structures, comma, or how, I don't think this was in any way meant to screen the structure. It was either screen it from view or store it within a structure. So I think that we can clean the language up to clarify that. I've never seen any major home occupation that has to screen the structure.
All right, so I think that was the problem, is that the modifier not visible from the public way or adjacent properties needs to only apply the screen from view. Or you store it within a structure, your stuff. Is that?
So it's, yes, exactly.
All right, so, and this may not be the final wording Nan uses, but I'm going to move that we make a change like that helps clarify that it's okay that the structures are visible.
Yes, so we just have to put the commas in the correct place.
Well, I think you have to move some words around. It's not just commas, I think, but
You're right.
I'll let,
Probably be store within structures or screen from view.
that's even better probably.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if we just switch the first phrase around, it will be fine.
yeah.
Now that we've read that. So I have that as Bill has moved that. And Who would like to second that?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Michelle. So we have changed that so that it is clearer.
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor of that, say aye.
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 Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. And then we are on to E, and there's only F. E, whether or not, which we don't actually need or not, I just want you to know that.
I know, it's a bad habit of mine.
Whether to increase the maximum amount of a non-conforming building, that a
Yeah.
non-conforming building can be expanded. Clause 9.3.c. So could it be just residential buildings? Could it be a different number for a building that otherwise conforms to a district but is non-conforming because it is in the overlay district? I think we have to go and look at this again because I don't remember.
All right, so basically this is the 25% expansion provision, and that expansion applies to use, so it can be intensity or of the use or scale of the use in some way, but it also applies to the building. So
Yeah.
any grandfathered structure is allowed to be increased 25% in footprint, basically. And again, this is a discussion. I'm not pushing hard one way or the other because I'm really of multiple minds on this. But again, particularly in sight of the fact, or in light of the fact that we have a lot of structures that will be non-conforming because they're within the riparian buffer zone, even if that's reduced to 50 feet, which I don't necessarily support doing. That, and their residential houses, maybe 25, Ernie Rivera says maybe 25% is a pretty generous amount that someone might typically expand their house. So that takes care of most of what people would want to do anyway. But maybe if we made that 35%, that would really cover like 99% of the people that wanted to do some modification to their house. And that might be sensible to do, but not give that same 35% to various other commercial uses, because that has a more intense impact on whatever community character. So it's just a thought to throw out, whether there, and I don't know how much wiggle room the town has legally to treat, say, a residential structure with a different expansion factor than a non-residential one. So, and whether we want to treat things in the overlay different than not in the overlay, and whether any of that is legally justifiable or morally justifiable. So I throw it out there as a thought, partly along the lines of what Ernie had mentioned earlier about maybe somehow reducing the requirements of the buffer zone. This would be one type of reduction of restriction.
Michelle,
Let Michelle go first. I have my hand up.
okay, sorry, Michelle,
Sorry.
Wait, did Ernie want to go or not?
You go first.
Okay, this just all sounds so complicated, and I have no way to figure out, based on anything, which would be the right answer, Bill, as far as
I get it.
commercial. And I just say leave it, or throw it out to the town board as something to consider, would be my thought. And I think, it was only Pete DeBoer that brought this up, right?
Him specifically, that's right.
Yeah, so.
But
Yeah,
I have heard
I don't think
others
you
say, gee, it's so unfair, but.
I don't, how do you know? How do you judge? Anyway, I'd say leave it or else call it to the town board's attention.
and I think we should also remember that we have suggested that at least every 2 years, that this needs to get looked at. So, Ernie?
So, the common workaround is going to be a variance. And this would be an area variance, which I understand is somewhat easier to grant than a use variance. Is that the case? If this were, right? So that being said, you do not have to demonstrate economic hardship in order to receive a variance. So in that, we cannot guess very accurately how much somebody's going to want to alter their property. I think that we've established a number at this point, 25%, that just triggers a process that you have to go through in order to get some relief. And if what if you're asking for is reasonable, then it can be granted. So I'm certainly not Suggesting 25% isn't necessarily the right number, but I don't want to be making 5 different numbers here. Let's pick one and stick with it.
Okay, anyone else? I don't hear a motion to change this.
No, I'm not making any motion. I just want to have the discussion.
Okay. I think we,
I do have
Sure.
a motion.
Okay.
That's not F. But Bill, do you have handy Nan's latest version that has the of the draft law that has all the definitions in it? I'm looking for the agritourism definition.
Okay, let's see. I will be able to pop it up shortly.
And the motion that I'd like to make, I mean, we could take a look at the full definition in just a moment. But the motion that I'd like to make is that the current definition includes a sentence that says an agritourism activity must be secondary to the primary farm use on a property. And my motion, unless Nan says this would not be allowable under New York state law, my motion would be to delete that sentence. So delete the sentence that says an agritourism activity must be secondary to the primary farm use on a property.
Nan?
The way the Ag and Markets has a very lengthy document that controls how they perceive agritourism on a farm operation. So that is actually the language that the state uses. They do limit. So a farm's purpose is to have a farm product. And they actually limit agritourism to certain percentages and requiring that the ag tourism has to be related to promoting the products grown on the farm. So that does flow from state guidelines on agritourism. That's why it's in there.
But it doesn't make it less restrictive. I mean, more restrictive. I mean, the amendment that Barbara's suggesting doesn't make it more restrictive.
I think what it's the point that the state is trying to make is that if someone is a farm and getting, for instance, ag assessment, and they're growing pumpkins, and they want to have a pumpkin patch, that's part of their farm operation, that is fine. But if someone has a plot of land and brings in pumpkins from somewhere else to have some sort of pumpkin activity, that is not a farm operation. It's some sort of business, but it's not a farm operation because they're not growing the pumpkins there.
Right, but Barbara's amendment is just to allow that sort of thing to happen outside of the formal definition of agritourism by the state.
Yeah, so
I'm only pointing out that agritourism, the state considers agritourism on a farm as secondary, a secondary activity on the farm operation.
So let me say one thing.
Based on the amount of money they make or what? So how is secondary judged?
It's based on, I could look it up while we're talking. It's based on, I'd have to look that up. I don't know the answer to that offhand.
So if I can hazard a guess, the reason the state is doing this is that if you are a farm operation, you get certain protections and advantages.
Right.
So for them, you know, being a farm operation is what's primary, and they want to make sure that anyone that's getting our benefits really is a farm operation. And you can do this agritourism thing on the side, that's fine. We're trying to find agritourism for our zoning law. And so maybe we can do that in a way that does, because we're not, maybe the problem is saying activities coming on a farm operation. What do we want to have the agritourism, I guess, is sort of the question.
I'm sorry, what did you just say?
What do we really want agritourism to be? I mean, I think we're thinking that it might be anyone doing some kind of farming like thing, and they have invited people in to, you know, somehow share that experience.
Yeah, it's everything else that's in that paragraph, except the sentence that an activity must be secondary to the primary farm use.
But do we care if that facility operation farm qualifies as a farm operation as per New York State?
I do not.
No, I mean, it's big, it's like Red Kettle Farms, go out Cantor Way,
Right.
big building, they sell flowers, they sell produce, they have pick operation as well, so, but their primary focus is, hands-on, people coming and buying pumpkins and going through the corn maze,
It's selling stuff.
yeah.
Right, so
That would be called secondary to an agricultural operation.
I don't know, they,
That looks like a.
I mean, they grew the stuff,
business to me,
so.
But it's a business that we would allow in this district.
Nan?
I'm just
Maybe-
trying to think through the implications of whether can you have agritourism? I think what the state is trying to do, and maybe from a zoning perspective, you don't care, that what the state is trying to do is to ensure that farm operation is farming and not just doing, like a petting, like there's plenty of places, they have children's petting, not a petting zoo, but like farming, come bring your kids to pet the cows and the rabbits and things. And they're really not producing an agricultural product. So they shouldn't get any benefits, like you said, Bill, they shouldn't get any benefits from being a farm operation when they're really not producing any farm crop or
But
farm
for the-
crop.
But for the purposes of the town of Caroline zoning law, we're not giving them any particular farm benefits. We're saying that, that a petting zoo would be fine, for the town of Caroline.
well, and we probably should check the use line for agritourism. I was going to scroll down there in a minute.
It's peas.
it's peas everywhere.
It's permitted,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So
So we may not want to wordsmith it entirely now, but Barbara, by taking it, the intent would be that we sort of remove this farm operation restriction. Because once we're not talking about farm operations, the whole point about being secondary goes away. But we have to define agritourism in some way that encompasses this set of activities sort of mentioned at the bottom, including petting the cow.
So are you saying that it shouldn't even be on a farm operation? It should be then just say activities? So what would ag tourism be if you take away the farm part of it? How is it ag tourism then?
Well, I'm just suggesting deleting that one sentence, that it must be
Okay.
secondary to the prime
Okay.
farm use on a property.
Yeah, and she's
Okay.
living in the part that says it's on a farm operation.
Yes.
So
Okay.
I only ask, does farm operation mean only things that satisfy that formal definition by New York State of a farm operation?
That's in the
Yes,
first.
the way it's written now, yes.
So what if we call that activities conducted on a farm and get rid of the as defined by New York State Ag and Markets Law?
Well, then we have to define what a farm is different. I mean, we already have a
Alright.
definition for farm operation.
All right, that gets hard, I admit. All
Okay,
right,
so
I take back my suggestion. I don't know what to do.
Barb has this motion to get rid of that sentence, and Ernie is seconding it.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of removing that sentence, because we are not defining what's a farm, we're not doing anything for ag and markets. We're just taking it out of the law, our law.
Just for clarity, I will point out that we do have a definition of agricultural or farm operation, which is a rather long paragraph and maybe the longest item in our list of definitions.
I think that's true. Yep. Okay.
I'll scroll up to that once we vote on this, I guess.
Okay, so all in favor of this motion, say aye.
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 That's approved. Okay.
I'm not going to actually take it out of the document, Nan, because you are the keeper of the master document. So here's this.
Yeah.
All right, so I've now read it. Well, okay, I haven't quite, but perhaps
I'm all for keeping that, because I think
All
it
right.
does define what a farm is.
right. So what I'm going to suggest, here's my amendment then, is that where in the definition of agritourism, it says conducted on a farm operation as defined by New York State Agri Markets Law, so basically starting with farm operation through law,
Uh-huh.
and replace that with agricultural or farm operation.
Right, so
I'll
our own-
second
our
that.
own definition, yeah, good idea.
Okay,
Got it, Nan? That's what we're voting on. We haven't accepted it yet, but
okay, so that's Bill, and who seconded it?
I did.
Thank you. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
I,
Hi.
That's approved. Okay. Thank you. I think we have one more item to discuss, which is,
except for the two items I added to the agenda, but yes, we'll go back to, let's see,
think
the motions and
1.1.
discussions.
it's about criminal penalties and enforcements,
Yeah.
and at
So
least my
basically,
memory is-
I just want to understand where those come from. It's not any big point or deal or anything I want to change. I just want to remind myself if this is like basically boilerplate from the state or where these parts came from.
Yeah, my memory is that it was boilerplate from the state. Nan, is that correct?
Yeah, the fine, these kinds of penalties are set by state law. So we
Okay.
can't say it's gotta be $10 versus $250.
Right.
It's,
And
those are
the-
set.
And the inclusion of jail time is also there in the state. Okay,
Okay.
and discussion from
And-
my end.
And Bill, you had the two items that you mentioned at the beginning.
Yeah.
So go on to
So-
those.
Yes, all right, so let's do the building size and setback thing, though we now have total commercial footprint, but that's okay, so I think it's still gonna work. Let me just go and find,
Well, he's
one of
muttering.
the things
Go
that,
ahead.
that kind
Yeah.
of got lost somewhere, that's just very minor, was whether or not we needed a definition for open space. That was brought up by one of our commenters, and we do not have a definition for open space.
Okay,
Do we need one? I have one.
Yeah, we definitely need one because the open space is part of the wording that's used in the conservation subdivision. I'm not
Yes.
sure why it's not there. Maybe it got deleted somewhere along the line, but yes, we definitely need that.
I got one. I got
which is?
one. Okay. Ready?
Yep,
A land area not developed for residential, commercial, or institutional use. What do you think? What do you think? I found that online. I think that's some sort of actual
so it's
formal definition.
a land area not developed for residential, commercial, or
For institutional use.
institutional use.
so Ernie, a question. I gotta figure out what I did, okay, so often whether or not an agricultural field qualifies as open space or not is a question. Because of course, that is a commercial use, but again, it's also sort of undeveloped. And in the comprehensive plan, when open space was defined, agricultural fields were included in open space. Do you consider your definition to include or exclude a
Did not-
farm field?
Not intended to exclude agricultural. So.
I mean, I don't know how you interpret commercial, right? So read your definition again. Let me listen to it one more time.
Yeah,
So do
Okay.
you want to read the one that's on the Department of Environmental
Let's try it
Conservation
out.
website?
Yeah.
Open space is land or water that is undeveloped, parentheses, free from residential, commercial, industrial, or institutional use, close parentheses. Open space can be either private or publicly owned and includes areas such as forests, agricultural field, public parks and preserves, and coastal lands.
I love that definition.
And that is what I based what's in the comp plan on, Barb. That wording sounds so familiar. I just moved a few words around, so I didn't have to put quote marks around it.
Okay, so Barb, Ernie, I think you're withdrawing your motion and Barb is putting that one forward.
Hers was a friendly amendment.
Yeah,
Okay, so,
I'll second Ernie's as amended.
and Barb, will you send that to, Nan?
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, we have to vote on it.
Are going to. All those in favor of accepting that definition of open space, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Approved unanimously. Thank you. Okay.
All right.
And then we're going on to Bill to, is it page
Okay.
56? Is that where you were?
Well, no, I don't, I have my two new motions, I think. Is there anything else from the list I sent out that anybody wants to move or discuss?
So we had some discussion about lot coverage. Is that kind of gone away? You know?
No, I think that's what he's bringing up.
That maybe, that's part of this, I think, Ernie.
Yeah,
Okay, all
I think we can make that part of this at least.
No, I
Yes.
just, you know.
I think that's what you said at the beginning.
Well, sort of. So do we want to have a specific discussion about lot? I mean, Barb withdrew her motion, which had been to, I think, get rid of one of the building size limits in favor of lot coverage. So I'm not, but yeah, if you want to make a motion on lot coverage first, that's fine with me,
No.
or discussion.
Let's finish what you were doing and see where we are.
Okay. So this was one of those, crazy Bill moments that maybe don't lead anywhere because it's really not a problem or an issue. So, I'm looking at our zoning law and we have commercial lot sizes that could be an acre or anything larger, but we don't have any side yard setbacks. And I'm thinking, what at least I'm picturing is that maybe there's commercial development here. There's two parcels next to each other. One person plunks their building down here. One puts their building down there. Everything's separated. That's fine. But now we have a landowner. Maybe they own this whole parcel to begin with, and they really want a bigger building than the zoning law allows. And so my question that I posed to Ernie and Nan is, could they essentially put two buildings right up against each other and put a big door here in the space, basically have one building, and therefore in some sense get around the intended part of keeping the scale of structures smaller? And Ernie told me, well, there are building code limitations that do require some amount of separation of the buildings. But then Ernie, I was not clear if you said if you did a special firewall, if that meant you could get away with no separation or not.
With enough money, you can do that.
Okay. And then it's not just that, but if you had three parcels, you could build a triple size building. And if you cut it up really cleverly, a 4 or 5 parcel,
It's a really serious conversation we had about this.
Four parcels.
Yeah. All right. So where this seriously goes is if one does not want, and it's a question, maybe this is a reasonable way that someone could live with the zoning law and that we just live with it. That's fine. Or one way around that is that you introduce, at least for commercial properties, a side yard setback, which means you could not do this. You have to have at least some space between your building and the parcel boundary. And, maybe that would still let someone build a 30 or 40 foot breezeway between two buildings, but it begins to reduce the attractiveness of doing something like this. That led to a bit of an email discussion about what you're really trying to do in a zoning law. And I'm going to summarize, but then Ernie and Nan and everyone else has 2 cents to put in. But, we're looking at scale, intensity, location of a parcel, and use. And obviously use is determined by the use table. Scale is kind of the size of the building. So we've been dealing with that with total commercial footprint. The intensity to some extent is this lot coverage thing. And location on a parcel is pushed around by setbacks. And so they all get at something different. Like how big a particular set of structures can be is that total footprint, but the lot coverage might force that set of structures to be in a larger lot than the 1 acre minimum. So, lot coverage has an impact on the intensity of use of a parcel. The building size, a total commercial footprint, has a influence on the scale, but whether you can sort of cluster and whether you want things clustered or separated gets at setbacks. And so the question was, maybe if we want to worry about this kind of thing, then we should introduce some kind of side yard setback, at least for commercial parcels. And Nan brought up the point that often in zoning, there are side setbacks, and particularly often there are them when you are at boundaries between zones. Because particularly if you have a commercial zone bumped up against a residential zone, that residential house doesn't feel very comfortable with 10 or 15 feet away this commercial structure. So you put a larger side yard setback maybe at a zone boundary. So those are some of the notions. I've glossed over a lot of the discussion in some of those emails that I think should come out now in the group. But I do want to know, is anybody else wondering about this, and would anyone else be offended if someone did this? And if so, is there an idea of trying to do something different between with a side yard setback?
Ernie?
My point would be that anything that kind of approached this, most of these uses are going to come up for a special use permit or a site plan review or something. And somebody's going to say, hey, you know, you are gerrymandering our zoning law, which was intended to do B, and you would have to prove to me that, you know, that building 3, where you've got 3 buildings all glommed together, is a better solution than 3 separate buildings, which I think one could make a fairly good argument for. So I don't want to go there. I think it's trying to figure out stuff that just hasn't happened yet. If somebody abuses the zoning law like this in the future, let's change the law, but it's not going to end up meaning that everybody can just run rampant over this forever.
Anyone else want to speak?
I would say, however, the idea of setting up some sort of just side language, I don't want to rewrite the freaking law at this point, but just side language about some sort of reasonable setback when you are abutting another district, or a residential district. You know, it's just, I guess the question is, what would this apply to? I mean, we allow commercial uses in all of our hamlets.
Right.
And then, you know, so it would just be, if you have a commercial use, the commercial building shall not be, I mean, it's like it's next to a house. I mean, so you would be setting up setbacks for commercial buildings only. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's hard to think that that's going to be a good thing everywhere.
I'm inclined to give an award to anyone who comes up with the example B. Out of sheer ingenuity.
I know, but Bill and I came up with this independent.
Well, then you both get a great award, but but I agree. I don't think we need to change everything at the moment. And Bruce?
It may not be illegal to do that, but I would think if it came in front of the review board, that the review board would say, because we're supposed to give them explanations of what we think they should possibly do to do it better.
Yep.
It just seems like that would be taken care of there.
I think so too. Okay, so anyone else want to speak to that? And I think you had one more, Bill.
I have one more, and this is a little trickier, and so, you know, we'll see where this leads. It has to do with basically the overall structure of the water resources overlay section and the intent of the overlay zone. And the tricky sentence, or what's led to this, is in 5.3.c, and here's the sentence, which says, whenever a building envelope cannot be sited outside the water resources and flooding overlay, as shown in our map, abbreviated site plan review and approval by the review board shall be required. And in terms of definitions, I poked at what cannot means with Nan, and gave examples of, for example, maybe someone who wanted to be further off the road so their pets would be safer. So they did not want to be close to the road, maybe felt they couldn't be close to the road, but being further off the road, put them, say, in the flood zone or something. And she said, nope, nope, that's not a cannot. And I said, well, what about someone who wants to put solar on their house? And there's not enough solar exposure to do it outside the water resources overlay zone. So in order to have solar on their house, they would have to be in the water overlay zone. She said, no, not good enough. What that cannot means is really the cases where the water resources overlay covers such a vast percentage, we've set 75% in the law, that you literally cannot put a house in the remaining piece of the property. So what that means is that other than for those parcels, we are effectively saying you cannot build something in the water resources and overlay zone. I think that's right. And I've quibbled about the language a bit during the day today, but I think in general, cannot means cannot, not just I don't want to. No good reason is it. It's really, you really can't get a structure on the remaining part of your parcel. This creates some conflicts. And so I'm going to describe that and then put up what I think we have to face a policy decision. So if the law is effective as saying that except for these number of cases, you cannot build in the water and resources flooding overlay zone, that conflicts actually with stuff right inside the law, because in the riparian buffer zone, right there in the law, we say, oh, but you can build these things in the outer part of the buffer zone layer. So we're allowing building to happen in one part, but just before that, we said you can't do any building. The second thing is the conflict with the town's existing flood control, flood damage prevention law. The existing flood damage law says you can build in a flood zone, but you've got to build your building such that it will withstand the flood and then not have stuff, and not make the flood worse and, some other things. So that's not a problem. We can supersede perhaps the town law that way, but I want to make it clear, we are superseding existing town law because it says you can build there, but if you're not letting people build in the water resource overlay in general, then you're not letting them build there. And the final point has to do with wetlands, which, yeah, you can't build there, but really, if you get a permit, you can. And in general, it's very, very hard to extract a permit from the DEC or the federal government, but it doesn't mean you can't. And projects do occasionally get permits to go through a wetland or over a wetland. And Nan is telling me that right now, DEC is quite readily handing out wetlands permits to large solar farms. So if a town resident managed to wrangle a permit out of the DEC and then came to the town would say, no, sorry, that's not good enough. You can't build there because the town zoning doesn't let you do that. So that may be what we want to say. That we may say the DEC is being too lax about this, but I want to make it clear that we have said in a number of things in town meetings and in that paper we put out, that we're not adding any regulations to state and federal things on wetlands and the town law on flood zones. But in effect, we are, because we're not allowing in general building there. So all this can be cleaned up one direction or the other, but I think the point is now I need to know which direction we want to go. So here's my take on what the possible policies are. What's our purpose of the overlay zone? So number one, and that's roughly how that first part is worded, is we are trying to prohibit building in the overlay zone unless it absolutely cannot be avoided. And that basically means for properties that have enough of the overlay on them that there aren't any viable alternatives. And of course, it also covers properties where the building is already there when zoning is passed. And of course, we're going to allow them to expand their building. So therefore, you're building in the overlay zone. That's one policy. The alternative policy is that the purpose of the overlay zone is basically to trigger abbreviated site plan review. But otherwise, the actual regulations for what can and cannot occur depend on the actual water resource. So that if it's a riparian buffer, this is point A here, then it's what we have written down. That is, some amount of building is allowed in various places, but not too much. And that what you should do is go out when you want to do this and actually measure where the stream is and measure 100 feet back. And oh, by the way, if you have a steep slope, you have to go further than that. And so you find that edge in practice at the time. And that's what they have to stay out of. They can go right up to that line. not sometimes where the overlay zone is 25 feet further from that. Similarly, if an area is a flood zone and only a flood zone, obviously if it's a wetland or a riparian buffer 2, which a lot of the flood zone is, that's different. But if it's only a flood zone, then all you got to do is comply with the town law. You're allowed to build there, but you have to comply with the town law. And third and fourth, if it's a wetland, whether it's DEC regulated or not, it matters. But if it's DEC regulated, you go out there, you do a wetland delineation to find the borders of the wetland. You got to stay out of that wetland, and you have to stay 100 feet away from it because the DEC says you got to do that. Unless you manage to get a permit from the DEC to do something different, in which case whatever conditions they put in the permit is what controls your development. And the similar thing for a non-DEC wetland, you go out there, you do delineation, you got to stay out of this wetland. You can come up close to it if you want to step foot in the wetland, and you can get a permit from the federal government. More power to you, and you're allowed to do that. So these are two alternate interpretations of what the purpose of the water resources overlay zone is. And I think we haven't been clear enough on exactly which that is. I think a lot of us have been talking like number 2 is where we're at, but not always. And the writing of the section leans more towards 1. So I am proposing that we discuss what we really want the purpose of an overlay zone to be. And based on that, the language that's in there can be modified to reflect that.
Okay, so we're talking, I think that we're talking about section C in 5.3. Is that what you're talking about?
You got it. You got it.
Okay, discuss. Who wants to say something about this? Bart?
I think that what we are trying to accomplish is Bill's number 2, paragraph number 2.
I agree.
I guess I started out this whole meeting kind of suggesting that this was something we wanted to suggest to the town board.
Yes.
I was kind of getting the feeling that we were having lots of prohibitions where what we intended was what we originally talked about was review. Yeah, this is very confusing, you know, and you just kind of hear it spoken at you, but I think I generally agree with you.
Yeah, I certainly had not read C to be as exclusive as Bill just described it. And man, you're agreeing with what Bill said.
What do you mean I'm agreeing? What do you mean?
With his description of what C says, essentially that no one could build there. I mean, I had more, cannot means what he was describing.
Yeah, I mean, it clearly says that, except for there's a list of, I don't know, 15 things or so that could be put in the riparian buffer in the riparian setback.
Right.
Except for those, it says no other building is allowed.
Right.
So from the riparian perspective, yes, that there is a prohibition on development in that riparian zone, and it is confusing because that overlaps with the flood in many places, the flood zone and a wetland.
But consider a place that's only a flood zone. What would happen if someone wanted to build something in something that's only a flood zone? They want to put their house there and they went and that triggered ASPR. What happens?
Well, it would first have to meet all of the provisions of the floodplain law. So they would, have to raise it above base flood and all that stuff. And then the ASPR from this section, the review board would have to look at how to mitigate the location in that floodplain so that, and there's a list of things, I forget what number it was, M or N or something like that, that listed what the review board was supposed to mitigate. So they would have to try and find a site in that flood zone that mitigated it to the maximum amount.
All right, so I'm going to pause you because this is different than what we exchanged by email. So I want to make sure that I'm right. So I've got a house. I want it back there in the flood zone because I want to be where the sun shines on my solar panels. I could put it over in this other part of my property that's not in the flood zone, but I don't want to. I want to put it over there in the flood zone. But I know I go in front of the review board. What I thought you told me earlier, and I'm happy if I'm wrong, is that they're going to say, no, you got to put it out there outside the water resources overlay. Is that true or not true?
So this is where I totally agree that the language is confusing. The way it's, so because we've kind of mushed floodplains, wetlands, and the riparian zone into one area, one overlay. And so it says, on one hand, it says that if you cannot site your building outside of the full overlay, which includes wetlands, floodplains, in the riparian zone, then you have to get ASPR. You have to go for a review and find the best place to site it to minimize the impacts. But it also says that if you are in the riparian setback or the riparian buffer, that there's only a list of a few things, 15 things like fences and benches and things like that, that
Yes.
can be in the riparian zone. So it's saying, so basically it's saying that if you have riparian setback or buffer, there's no building in the riparian zone. And for those areas that are outside of that area, in the other sections of the overlay, and you can't site outside of that area, you get ASPR. So
Right,
the
but you just
way,
said can't cite, as opposed to don't want to cite. So explain to me, can I cite my house in that floodplain or not, if all it is that I want to?
no, it's you have to, it says when it, let me look at it. I don't want to speak out of turn here. Let me get the language up. So it says, let me get it here.
It's on page 65, I think.
Yeah, so, yeah. So the way I think wrote it and interpret it is that when it cannot be is not just because I want it over here. It's that you go back to the 75% area where it says, let me just read here. So this is the cannot, and this is maybe where it's confusing. How I interpret it is that the cannot is where more than 75% of a parcel of land is covered by water resources. So if you have land, if you have half of your parcel is in the overlay and the other half isn't, you have room potentially to build. But let's say you have, so the exceptions define what that cannot is. I know it's not clear. I mean, I totally understand the confusion here. And when I talked to Bill today, I think it goes back to what are you trying to, it goes back to what are you trying to accomplish? Do you want to say to folks, these are areas that should not be built in for these environmental and safety reasons, and therefore the overlay is to avoid development in those areas? Or do you, so go back to what your purpose is. Let's not worry about the cannot, what it says now, because we need to clear that confusion up.
Okay, so here I propose these two different visions
Right.
of the purpose, and I think you do agree that those are indeed the two visions we're talking about.
Yes. Yes.
Barb?
So Bill, can you pull up the language of 5C3
Yeah,
and this discussion?
Let's see, so I'll do the whole one. And I will do that, Barbara, again, I think the point that I think Nan's trying to make, and then I'm gonna second, is that, we can whittle and diddle and stuff, but if we can decide what we want, Nan can make sure that the wording says that. So the more fundamental question is, what do we want, 1 or 2? But
No,
let me,
I understand that, but I'd like to
okay,
ask
let
a
me
question,
go,
possible
because
wording.
I do think I have it up. But I'm warning you, I think tiny words.
I have it up if you want.
So now it'll be a matter of
There you go.
getting down there, and I'll let me move you guys off. There we go.
It's, you want to go to.
It's like page 65.
Yeah, all right, so we're gonna be down, yep, we're getting there. Believe me, I recognize this all too well. Let's see.
Right there.
No, we're just after this. Development standards. And then I hope you guys are very dizzy by now. There we go. We're almost there.
There, whoops, you just passed it.
All right, I'm back.
Okay, so Barb,
So in that second sentence, if we make this change, would this help accomplish what we're trying to do? Could that number 2 on Bill's previous list? So if we change that second sentence to say something along the lines of, whenever a building envelope is proposed to be sited inside the water resources and flooding overlay, blah, 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 ASPR and approval by the review board shall be required.
Maybe, though I think we would need to do some clarification elsewhere about what, like, does and doesn't apply, like on wetlands and things like that. I mean, that can be done. That's why I think really deciding what we want and letting Nan worry, but yeah, I think that's a good suggestion.
I agree. I think that's a good suggestion. So Barb, I'm taking that as a motion and I'm seconding it.
Okay.
And then I
Okay, so
think,
it is proposed.
So whenever a building envelope is proposed to be sited inside the water resources and flooding overlay.
Does it need to be more than a building envelope? So we're talking about parking areas and all that other stuff. About a proposed project or?
project. Makes sense.
Well, the building envelope encompasses the building and the septic system area, and I forget, I'd have to look at the definition. It might even include the driveway.
I think it does.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm going to say that I think we can't do this kind of wordsmithing here because Barbara, I think that's probably not enough total change to make sure that everything is clear. So Nan would still need to go through. I'm happy to discuss this, but I'm going to, in the end, say Nan should still rewrite some stuff and come back to us for a final vote next week.
Well, and they go down, Bill, to F.
Yeah, because I agree with some stuff you pointed out earlier, Nan, about reorganizing a little bit too, but yeah.
Yeah, so F, that's a significant statement. It says, except where allowed by this zoning law, which is outlined a little further along, which we can organize better, in agriculture, no building shall be allowed within the riparian buffer area or the buffer setback. That is a prohibition wherever that is mapped within the overlay.
Yeah,
And then we
again,
define what those are in terms of the distances from the stream and so forth.
again, I'm okay with that because we're setting up what you can do and not do in a riparian buffer area. And we said you can do a little bit of building the outer part, a little less in the inner part. I don't mind prohibiting stuff in the riparian buffer area. I mind a blanket prohibition over the entire water resources overlay.
I
So this
agree.
particular part does not bother me particularly.
Agree.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me either. So let's go back to the original question, which was about essentially 1 or 2. And I think
Right,
that
yeah, good, thank you. Let's vote on that before we.
we're pretty much thinking, I certainly was, and I heard Barb say this, and I heard Bill say this, that we were looking at number 2 as what we were thinking about. Is that true for everyone else? Ernie and
Yes,
Bruce
yes.
and Michelle?
Yes, I agree with that.
Okay, so what I think we have to do then is, Nan, you need to do some rewriting and send us what that is. so that we can be assured that we're saying what we think we're saying throughout this. Because it is words and we often get confused. So with that, I want to say what we have done tonight. So with this, I think we are through all the things that we said we were going to bring up and discuss.
Lot coverage,
Oh, excuse me, lot coverage. Okay, so let's go on to lot coverage. I'm gonna extend this for 10 more minutes.
no, I'm not really. Not prepared to, I think we gotta be pushed out with them. I mean, does anybody else want to discuss lot coverage? I just, it had been brought up, it was a topic. I started to think about it in more detail, and I honestly can't quite remember what I wanted to say about it, but if it was gonna come up, I was ready to talk.
Okay. Does anyone else have anyone that they want to talk about the lot coverage?
No.
No.
Okay, no, if nobody wants to talk about it, I don't.
Okay. So then I think where we are is Nan has to make a number of changes that we discussed this evening and we all have to
Including
vote
that
this
wording,
evening.
I mean, potentially the wording proposed by Barb,
Yes.
but see how it all works out.
And then we have to look at that final document and vote on it. And voting on it then means that we then take it to the board.
Well, wait 1 second though. What you're voting on is not necessarily just the draft zoning law, it's the whole final report.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, it's the whole final report, because we made some changes tonight that are about the report.
Oh, and to that point, Jean, so I believe the final report that Nan put together included the sort of reader's guide version of the draft zoning law.
Yes.
We should make sure that this interpretation of the water resources overlay is clear in that document, I think. So there may be some wording there to change, but again, it's one thing to have it in the final report, but I would urge us to push this a little more publicly, like post just the reader's guide on the website and maybe put an announcement out on the listserv and,
the reader's guide accurate?
swing from the treetops,
Yeah, is the reader's guide accurate? We're not taking any more comment. You know that.
Right, I think we should review it one more time to make sure no changes we've made, and this is one that might, tweak the wording a little bit, are different. So
Okay,
everyone, please do that.
Bill, I'm very happy to post the reader's guide, but realize that we're not taking any more comment.
Oh, no, that the point of putting the reader's guide out is not to say, oh, we want comment on this. It's like, this is information people should have so they understand the zoning law better, because they are still going to be thinking about the zoning law, and they are still going to be going to the town board and discussing the zoning law. And gee, wouldn't it be helpful if folks in town had this document to help them grasp and grapple with the zoning law
Yes,
better
I agree.
for when they have conversations with the town board?
Is the reader's guide,
I am not suggesting I want us to keep meetings so we can hear what people think about that beloved reader's guide. No.
okay, so is the reader's guide accurate considering the changes that we've made? I think it is.
I'd have to review it to be sure. I think it probably is, but I would want to review it.
Is then just send me an email tomorrow and I'll get it up.
Okay.
With that, I have told you I can't meet next Tuesday, but I could meet Monday or Wednesday. If anyone wants to meet them, Wednesday's a town board meeting.
So dates, what dates are you talking about when you say Monday or whatever?
Monday would be the 27th.
I can meet the 27th.
I can meet the 27th.
I can meet the 27th.
Okay, let's meet on the 27th.
Okay.
Nan will probably, these are not huge changes, I hope, and Nan should be able to get us something towards the end of this week that we can look at over the weekend and come back and make a decision about. The other thing I wanted to say is that if we then on Monday agreed that this was the version, the way we wanted it, we could move this ahead to the town board. We will have a vote about what we're doing. And we would bring it to the town board. We could possibly bring it to the town board on Wednesday, though it has been suggested that the town board may want to have either a special meeting or a time set aside where you talk to us about it. So you let us know if you want us to do that. We could bring it to you on the Monday and then you could ask us to meet with you if you wanted to do that. Though we would have already dissolved which I'm
Yeah.
so looking forward to. I believe it involves losing weight.
I would think that it would be perfectly appropriate, the town board asked to meet with you after the dissolution
Yeah,
for the purposes of explanatory.
we'd be thrilled.
Good. You just wouldn't have authority to
Right.
do your stuff.
I love
You,
that.
you,
Okay.
you cannot coerce our participation. Is that what you're saying? Once we hand you the report?
I think that's what they're saying. Okay, so with that,
Gene, I think I was mistaken. I think the Wednesday after that, I think that's the 5th Wednesday of the month. Is
yes.
that right? So that's not a town board meeting.
So we could also meet on the Wednesday, which would be the 29th. Would anyone prefer to meet on Wednesday, the 29th to Monday, the 27th?
I won't be here. I won't be here then.
Okay. Is Monday fine?
27th.
Monday is fine. Let's meet on Monday, the 27th. Fabulous. This is our penultimate meeting. That will be our ultimate meeting,
No,
and it will be over in March.
knock on wood.
Hearing all that, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Okay. Good night, everybody. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Good night, everyone. Was that fun?
This is good stuff.